So welcome aboard, everybody, to this exciting new chapter to start at NTU, the launch of HeForShe NTU. My name is Pallavi Mohan. I am a research fellow at NTU and your host for this session, and also a woman making her way through a career in STEM myself. So thank you for tuning in with us today, and we hope that this session today adds a bit of value to your personal career journey, wherever you're at right now. So just a few housekeeping matters before the event begins. Please keep yourself on mute at all times, and do note that the entire session will be recorded. Right, now let's just get on with the event. I am extremely thrilled to present the launch of an important new chapter for NTU, HeForShe. HeForShe NTU is a student initiative that represents the vision put forward by HeForShe UN and powers promotion of women in engineering, research, and science for gender equality in STEM in NTU. It is committed towards promoting the empowerment of all genders to create a bold, visible, and united force for gender equality. It aims to advocate the importance of gender equality through the engagement of men as advocates of change and foster a supportive community as one NTU, with women and men working together to shape a gender-balanced future roadmap in STEM. Now, to enlighten you a bit further on this and how you can play a part in this, we have with us today quite an exciting lineup of speakers, as you can see on the slide in front of me. All advocates of what HeForShe stands for, bringing to you their unique perspectives on gender equality and STEM, and how we as a people can collectively work towards a society that transcends gender norms and barriers. Now, to open the event with us, we have Professor Sierin Lim. Professor Lim is the co-chair of Powers and Women at NTU, the Associate Dean of Global Partnerships and Associate Professor of School of Chemical and Biomedical Engineering, the Co-Deputy Executive Director of Health Tech NTU, and the Exco Committee member of the Society of Women Engineers in Singapore. She is also a UN Ambassador for Women in STEM. So please, Professor Lim, please take the stage.
Okay, thank you, Pallavi. And thank you for inviting me. And I'm very glad that HeForShe is actually launching today. And this is something that we have been thinking about, but never got the energy. But then I'm so glad that we have a bunch of really young and excited people to make this happen. So I just wanted to start with very short statement here. The pipeline is leaky. When I was into my schooling in engineering, I never really thought that way, but only until 2013, it was not that long ago, when I actually started to realize that, looking at the numbers. And this really propelled me to think through and then look at various statistics. And one thing that I found from NTU, and it is the clearance from the dean has been obtained earlier, we actually have an interesting number here. Looking at this, starting at based on the data from 2019, and at the bachelor's degree, moving toward master's, doctorate, and then postdoctorate, we see a dropping proportion of women students in training as being in the College of Engineering. We also look at STEM, so which means science is included. And when we actually look at that, science started stronger in terms of proportion in the women's sector. But then as we go through the educational track, we do see drop. And that is back into the same, almost the same fractions at the postdoctoral level for women in science. So these two facts are really kind of make me think of how do we do something, or how can we do to promote more women into the STEM fields. And why we need to do that is because we can contribute, and STEM needs a lot of different perspectives that will make it make innovations that are relevant to the context of the genders as well itself. And just to make things a little bit in more perspective, how have we been doing in the last 10 years? I will just share a small statistics from the NTU database, and this is tracking for the last 10 years only at the engineering, which has at the undergraduate level. We have not seen much increase in terms of fractions, in terms of the percentage. Can we make it that, to do something to make it a little bit better? So what we have done, and this is with support from various different people, including Ministry of Education, about a couple of years ago, we set up something called POWERS, and that's the promotion of women in engineering, research, and science. That was launched last year on March 5th by Presidents Halima Yacob and Subra Suresh. The goal is really to recruit and empower women in STEM with the long-term goal of increasing gender diversity in the STEM careers. And the way we do it is by 3 different activities, which we call core activities. Core stands for connect, research, and educate. So we would like to connect women and students to their peers, to their mentors, as well as role models in the academia, as well as in the industry. We would like to understand how the perceptions in the society, or what are the challenges that these students and women are facing throughout their career when they are in the training, as well as a little bit beyond. And that we will achieve through our research programs and our research activities. We also would like to bring this awareness into the community and from industry, from academia, as well as the government stakeholders, and through the educate pillar. And just sharing a little bit of the research findings that we have so far, we saw that 1 in 3 degree holders are women in the field, and about 30% of local and researchers and engineers are women. Interestingly, when we did a national level survey, about 1,000 respondents, we found that 55% of those women who were trained in STEM ended up in STEM careers, compared to 70% of men. However, interestingly, we also found that women actually are equally likely as men to prefer practical and concrete career activities, which are often associated with STEM. So why are they not subscribing to the field? It's something that we try to understand more through different activities that I will share in a little bit. So some half of the women working in STEM, it is harder to get a job and progress in STEM career because of their gender. So that kind of perceptions is there. These are self-reported, and 36% of those women left STEM career pathway due to lack of diversity and inclusion in the field. So these are some of our findings, and you can expect them to be released very soon on our anniversary next month, or next week actually, in the form of 2 white papers that have been approved by the various stakeholders, including the Minister of Education. So so watch out for that, and then you can have more insights from our studies. So what we would like to do is really understand perceptions of women. I would like to invite everybody in the audience to participate in this small survey by scanning that QR code, and tell us what you think, or how we can actually make a more inclusive community to propel women in STEM. And in addition to that, we also would like to get some conversation started. And for that, we are partnering with Jen, and I think you will see Vivian Lim, who will be on the panel, and she will be our lead in these conversations in the future. You'll see her a little bit more often after this. Okay, so with that, I just would like to mention a bit of these in terms of the context of HeForShe, how important it is to have these collaborations between stakeholders, all the way from peers to the leaderships as well, and active outreach to talent recruitments, modifying how we actually call for applicants, very cognizant that there's an active effort that are required to actually ensure or increase the women participation in STEM. And providing a supportive community is very important, and how we actually achieve that is by providing equal opportunities, providing some career supports and seminars. And I can't stress enough that male allies are important. And I'm very happy that we have a few of those male allies here, including Professor Phee, who is one of the strongest supporters on campus when I started realizing there was not enough women in engineering. And he actually was the first dean that provided the funding, a matching fund from a donor to provide fourth-year graduate students and early postdocs with development grants. And so for those of you who are in that stage of your career, do apply. Every year we have this available to you. And then, yeah, just to conclude, increasing the sense of belonging by building an inclusive community is of utmost importance. And I'm very glad, and congratulations for the launch of the HeForShe. We need everybody on board, and especially our male allies. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for all your efforts, Prof. Sierin. We hope that we all can play a part in improving these statistics that you showed us. I think a great first step would be to participate in the survey that you mentioned. So go ahead, guys. So next up, we have another guest, like Prof. Sierin mentioned, here to open the event, Prof. Phee. Prof. Lewis is the Vice President of Innovation and Entrepreneurship Center, the Dean of College of Engineering, and the Tuan Centennial Professor in Mechanical Engineering at NTU. He has also recently been awarded the UWS Gender Equality Impact Award by United Women Singapore. So now I invite Professor Lewis to take over.
Thank you. Thank you, Pallavi, for the kind introduction. And very good afternoon to everyone here. Well, I'm proud to announce and to know about this new student initiative, HeForShe NTU today. As with the other initiatives on uplifting women and girls, this initiative will contribute to the overall goal of gender equality. In fact, HeForShe is rather unique, as it encourages men to understand that gender equality is not just a woman's issue, but rather a human rights issue. We will be able to spread this important message to the wider NTU community. This awareness amongst men that will be brought by the HeForShe NTU in activities through the course of the year and beyond will be vital to the university's commitment to gender equality. I hope that with time and effort, and HeForShe leading the charge, we will surely progress gender equal NTU. Next slide, please. I think that the future of work is changing. As jobs are evolving with new ones emerging at a very fast pace. Many of these jobs require STEM knowledge, and the advancement of humanity cannot rely only on pushing the technological frontier. For humanity to advance, the mindset towards females contributing to STEM will have to change. The importance of gender diversity in STEM education and research cannot be overemphasized if we wish to develop and harness new knowledge created to the fullest. In Singapore, children, regardless of gender, have equal access to quality science and mathematics education. This, in effect, allows every young person to be confident in choosing STEM options as he or she proceeds into tertiary education. The gender parity in NTU's STEM programs, as mentioned by Sierin Lim previously, must be improved, be it undergraduate numbers and progression to postgraduate degrees. In the College of Engineering, we are always in search of hiring excellent female professors. In fact, some of these world-renowned female professors have taken up leadership positions in NTU. For instance, Professor Madhavi is a world-renowned material scientist serving as Director of Global Alliance of Industries at NTU. Professor Lee Pui-Si, another top engineering professor, is current Dean of Graduate College at NTU. And 2 of the 6 heads of schools who report to me are senior female academics at their peak of their careers. TEU has also established the Women in Engineering, Science and Technology Development Grant, which enforces our commitment in supporting women engineers, scientists, and technologists embarking on their careers. In terms of our student leaders at the College of Engineering, I'm pleased to know that 45% of College of Engineering's student ambassadors are female. In the recently organized One Arena Robotic Challenge, the technical lead who was responsible for developing the training materials and the challenges was Ms Pei Yun, a School of Triple E Year 3 student who is an alumnus of River Valley High School. The current chairperson of Dyson Studio is Ms Gina Lim, an MAE Year 4 student who is an alumnus of Singapore Polytechnic. While we have exemplary females who have contributed to our STEM education and research, there is certainly more to be done. I'd like to end off my talk with a story. All new assistant professors in NTU are given 7 years to go through a very rigorous tenure process to prove themselves worthy of becoming associate professors and given a longer contract with the university, during which the assistant professor would have to leave NTU. Previously, a female assistant professor could apply for an extension of the 7 years if she gives birth to a child. Having children of my own and seeing how my wife had to cope with childbirth, I could understand the challenges for a woman to try to balance becoming a new mother and still excel in her career. As such, I, a male colleague, pushed for the policy to be changed, such that a female assistant professor would be automatically given the 1-year extension of the tenure clock if she has a child during the first 7 years. I suppose you can call that a classic HeForShe initiative, of which I am proud to share. In conclusion, I think that the work on improving gender parity is ongoing, and the future is for all genders to shape. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Lewis. That was very, very inspiring to listen to. Personally, I'm very glad that NTU has such policies in place, but I believe we can do much, much more as a community moving forward as well. Now let's hear more about HeForShe as an initiative, its goals and agenda as a new chapter in NTU. For this, I invite Vijay Prakash Durvedi to tell you more about the chapter. Vijay is a third-year PhD student in the School of Computer Science and Engineering, NTU. Vijay is co-leading the start of the HeForShe initiative at NTU, and he's a strong supporter of the fact that it requires a hand-in-hand cooperation by both men and women to achieve gender equality. Vijay, please come on board and tell us more.
Okay, thank you very much, Pallavi, for the introduction. And thank you, Professor Sierin and Professor Lewis, for opening this launch initiative and the different statistics and the advancements that you shared. It's very wonderful to hear your stories. And it's my pleasure to be talking today in detail about HeForShe at NTU. I want to thank my teammates, Nirvi and Sanjana, and other group of volunteers who have supported us in the initiative. And also I would like to thank Women at NTU and Powers to support and encourage us to do this, establish this chapter at NTU. So like Professor Lewis said, gender equality is not a women's issue, it's everyone's issue. So the way this movement was originally conceived, it was kind of a struggle led only by women and for women. But with time, all people are understanding, and it's correct that to understand that as well, that it's not just a women's issue, it's everyone's issue. It affects everyone. And for this, UN Women started this initiative, HeForShe, to increase the support of men for the achievement of gender equality. It invites all men to be partners in supporting women's rights for the achievement of gender equality and empowering women. Additionally, it also acknowledges how men actually stand to also benefit with the greater equality. And if they are able to support, if they are encouraged to support women, it improves the overall humanity and society and the community that we live in. So we have set out certain missions for this start. Our mission is to involve all genders in conversations on women empowerment and gender equality. And like we all got in the introduction, it affects everyone. And with this conversation, we'll try to complement the existing initiatives in NTU to have a platform and to create spaces so that conversations involve men as well, not only women. And it's a cooperative conversation on that regard. Our mission is also to improve the understanding of the role of men towards gender equality. In this sense, breaking the traditional barriers, traditional stereotypes surrounding the gender roles, and actually having a very cooperative environment and trying to come out of that traditional understanding of the roles. Similarly, motivating as many men as possible, including students, staffs, and every community member, to be advocates of change and empower women for gender equality. And finally, our mission is to keep on a gradual awareness on gender equality through our social channels and through activities that we'll conduct, so that more and more male can participate and support women, understand this issue, acknowledge what are the differences, and then contribute towards having a gender equal NTU and support women, so that we have a very improved gender equality situation in NTU and the community that the NTU alumnus will later go on to create or to participate in the workplace or later in the career. So for this, we have planned certain activities in the first year. Our first goal is to build conversations and spaces around gender equality in STEM. We will do so. Also, this is what has been advocated by HeForShe. We'll do so by inviting male global leaders from STEM to speak on their role in achieving gender equality, featuring questions such as how they are a HeForShe, how has been their experiences, and what are the commitments that they have performed in their approach to improve gender equality in the workplaces that they belong from. Additionally, like questions such as how can male uphold this duty and increase cooperativeness, attentiveness towards other genders. Similarly, we'll also be having ideathons where we'll collectively brainstorm new solutions to improve the campus culture and to actually develop a very positive awareness within the NTU community. And we believe through this, innovative solutions will be created both by participation from the students and also our own team as well. Next, we'll be conducting workshops and trainings, because when we often have some casual conversation, it's very often to find that people, so many students are unaware about several of the aspects. So we'll be trying to conduct workshops and training to allow students and community members to learn more on male allyship, to learn on unconscious bias concerning gender. And when this awareness will be there, it will naturally motivate. We believe that it will naturally motivate them to contribute as advocates for this cause. We will also be organizing several contests where students can participate. It will be like a writing contest, poster contests, so that it becomes a space where students can be aware of these things, not only through workshops, but also actually participating in stories, in writings. And that's what we do as students in STEM community. We learn several of the skills by actually practicing them in the labs, in teams, and in such other places. So this is one of our motivation, and it naturally benefits with how the STEM students and community habits are present. And finally, we'll be doing several awareness campaigns through social media. We are already have some of the plans in place to invite people to participate and share their commitment stories. And this is important because looking at a situation where so many male members in NTU are participating in this cause, it naturally motivates and inspires all others to, all other males supporting their females, and it helps fulfill our cause and also improve the overall gender equality environment NTU. So these are the planned activities. I would like to conclude with this very popular quote, actually. Like, what we share is much more powerful than what divides us. And I hope with this HeForShe initiative, we are able to spread this message to everyone. And we hope we're able to build more allyship, male allyship in NTU. And yeah, that is what I expect. And we will be working together with our team, and also like with the support of professors and also community members and general participants. So thank you very much. I would finally like everyone to, among the participants, to join in our initiative. This is just a quick form to show your support in our initiative. And once you join, we'll be in touch if there's any subsequent activities and campaigns that we'll be organizing. And that's it. Thank you very much, Pallavi. I'll hand over to you. I'll keep this screen there for a few more seconds so that interested participants can join. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you very much, Vijay. That was very interesting. I can't wait to see what HeForShe has in mind for the year ahead. And I also look forward to the NTU community being very active members of this chapter. So please do not forget to sign up with the QR code. Right, so let's get started with the panel discussion. So the first speaker that we have with us today is David Lum. Mr. Lum is a director in Motorola Solutions in the Asia Pacific region. He is an advocate of gender equality in STEM, and he is here to tell us about how Motorola has played a part in forwarding this goal as being very supportive male allies. Mr. Lum, maybe you could get started with a brief introduction yourself.
Thank you very much, Alavi. I appreciate the introduction, and I appreciate the invitation to join this particular launch of HeForShe for NTU. I think this is a wonderful initiative. Just very quickly about myself. I'm actually, I've been with Motorola for 38.5 years, my first company since graduating out of school. I graduated with an electrical engineering degree from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and then joined up with Motorola and been here ever since. First 10 years of my life was in the US, and the last 28 and so years have been specifically in Asia, but living here in Singapore a couple of times. So, and I really enjoy the experience here. Don't like the heat much, but it's okay. Singapore is a great place to be. But with regards to what Motorola has done, Motorola is actually, just like many other corporations in the US, has undergone a lot of diversity initiatives. I was fortunate enough to also be president of the Asian Business Council twice. You know what? I learned a lot about diversity, and including gender diversity. I also learned a lot just by being an actual supervisor of people inside Motorola about gender diversity. Lots of experiences, lots of very good experiences, in particular with females. I think females are a great addition into the STEM field if we can get more in. So the question is how do we improve the pipeline? How do we get them in? I think that in many companies, the culture is what helps support or discourage female participation in companies, and in particular STEM companies. So my company clearly is an engineering organization. Here in Singapore in particular, we've already won the Best Employer Award for a couple of times now, a couple of years in a row. And we really are a very good company to work for, because I think that the way that we do things, we brought our company culture from the US out here, and a lot of our Singapore managers really do embrace the idea that it doesn't matter whether you're male or female. If you can do the job and we get the best business outcomes of what we need, it doesn't matter. All right. So it could be a male or a female, it doesn't matter. As long as you can do the job and do the job well, great. And we've had a lot of wonderful successes where we've even promoted women into the the highest seniorship level positions around. We've got females right now at corporate leadership, right next to the CEO. We've actually had a female corporate general manager who ran the entire Asia Pacific division. And she came from a STEM background. She was actually in IT. And she made a wonderful general manager for us until she had to retire. So at least I can say, at least with my company, I think we're pretty good with it. And I think a lot of multinational companies are also very good with it. We still have to contend with, however, culture. I think culture, much of the Asian culture still has that ingrained bias against women going into STEM. And that's one of the things that I find very difficult to fight and break the mindset of. Even with many of the local hires that we have here, many of the Singaporean women really have a mindset that's very traditional, very Asian, and in a way, it kind of holds them back a little bit, and we still need a little bit of work in breaking that cultural mindset, so that way the women can be the best that they could ever be, and use the STEM education, use the STEM degree, use the STEM experience, use the STEM knowledge to really help them propel to something much greater than they realize. So that's my spiel. Back to you, Pallavi.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lum. I'd love to hear more on that, but first, let me introduce the next speaker that we have, Vivian Lim. Now, Vivian is a community builder and an NTU alumnus of the year. She was part of the co-founding team at TEDxNTU, where she curated years of ideas worth spreading since 2011. Building communities has always been her passion, and she believes in curating impactful ideas and conversations that matter for our society. She's also the co-founder of GEN, which is rebranded from Women in Asia, where her work focuses on building a new roadmap to a more equitable society that embraces diversity and promotes inclusivity. She was also selected as an Obama leader in 2019, one of the 200 leaders on a year-long program under the Obama Foundation Leaders, the inaugural Asia Pacific program. Representing Singapore, she was chosen for GEN's work on gender-related issues in the region. In 2020, she was recognized by Gen T, Tatler, as one of the 400 leaders of tomorrow in Asia, leading change and social impact. Wow. So Vivian, I invite you to take over from here and tell us a little bit more about yourself, something that I haven't told the audience here yet.
Thank you so much, Pallavi. Thanks
Sure.
for reading out my LinkedIn bio. I should have sent in a shorter one. I'm so sorry. But
It's impressive.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. I'm learning how to. I'm also learning how to take compliments as well. So thank you. I'm doing what I can. So hi everyone. Apart from the LinkedIn bio, something that I don't really speak enough about. I actually graduated with a Bachelor's of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering. I graduated from NTU in 2013. So I was just sharing with Prof. Phee that he was my prof back when I was an undergrad student. So I'm sorry, Prof. Lim, so I contribute to the leaky pipe of engineers who are not practicing what we were educated for. So I didn't join MAE because I didn't have a choice. It was actually my top choice because I wanted to be a car designer and a car engineer. So automotives. So that was the reason why However, after leaving the education, the STEM education, I'm currently in the field of for impact work with communities. That's what Pallavi mentioned. So in order to also, give back to the community, and also perhaps more reflective on my end to see how can I, give back and make sure that the other girls, the future generations, do not contribute to the leaky tap and come back into engineering. So that's a bit of my work, when we are talking about promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. My team is very curious and passionate about, how can we talk about this narrative from an Asian point of view as well? Because of course, we've seen the whole feminism wave and movement starting from the West. So for us, really, it's researching and investigating and seeing how it can be different or how it has to be contextualized to be different. So David, I think, mentioned a little bit about the different cultures as well. So that's very much a core of my work at Gen, where we're trying to see how this would relate. How can we then, understanding all these cultural nuances or these backgrounds, how can we then move towards a gender equal world for us here? So that's just a short blurb of what I do now. Yeah, back to you, Pallavi. I think you do have a bunch of questions. Yeah.
Sure. Yes, I do have a bunch of questions if that's what you were asking, but more on that later. So to recap, often the general presumption when it comes to the topic of gender equality is that it's all about women. Speaking about the current wave of feminism that you were talking about as well, there's been this predominant notion that, or at least there was earlier, that it's all about women. Why should men be concerned about it? But lately things have been changing, thankfully, but it is still often very rare to find men speaking about the advancement of women, and if not that, about supporting women in their empowerment. And it is very rare for a man not to see it as, the other side of the world's issue, and something that they can also take ownership for and attempt to change. So with HeForShe at NTU, we want to change exactly that notion. So Michael Kimmel said in his TED talk that anything about gender equality is not a zero-sum game, but a win-win that will result in more opportunity and more happiness for everybody. So really, it only makes sense for everybody to just get equally involved in this approach. So this is a question to both of you. So how important do you think is the support of men as partners for women empowerment, and how can that specifically contribute in championing gender equality? So the floor is open to both of you. Maybe
ladies
David.
first. Ladies
Sure.
first.
Yeah, I mean, it is, of course, if it's a yes or no question, I will say yes, it is important. Of course, having the whole partnership, it is very much part of the equation. And like what I was saying previously, we've seen the whole wave of feminism movements picking up. And all along, you'll see women's group that's for women, by women. And it's always coming off as a little bit of an aggressive point of view as well. So, I think where we are at is also right now to see, hey, how come, we're still not moving towards a more gender equal world, and what else can we do? And of course, because a lot of the movement have not involved men specifically, I don't think the question that we should be asking is the support of men important? But personally, I feel that we should be asking, how can we get men to support? So it's a how question. Because, in this landscape, and I'm sure that, if we go to our own friend circle or the males in our lives, if we ask, like, would you support, women, going up the ranks or pursuing and things like that, I don't think there's any men that's going to outrightly say no, right? So I think it's really coming from how do we want them to support, or what do you want them to do, right? So, and that can come in different levels as well, like advocating for that, but specifically, what do we want, or where do we want them to be advocating for us, right? Is it tweeting about us, right? Is that what we're seeing? Or is it participating in dialogues and sessions like that? Or is it just coming in discussions with us, right? Understanding the different points of view, like what Prof. Phee was mentioning, for his own experience, understanding the perspective of his wife at home. So that was a start, right? That helped him look at policy changing or influencing policies at his level or in his field of work. So I feel that should be the question. It's not how important, but it's like, how do we want them to support? Is it having men to also question together with us, why did policies turn out this way? How can we then take that step to think deeper? How can we prevent such biased policies and things like that? So it's more of a how question that we should ask as a community, rather than should they support or not support. Yeah, that's sort of my point of view. David, what do you think?
Excellent insight. Excellent insight. For me, my answer is, I think that the support of men is extremely critical. Being in corporate America, I tend to find that all companies, not just mine, but many of the my other friends that I have working in many other different corporations, I find that because it generally is really a man's world, you have to have somebody on the inside talk about women, talent, and helping to promote them. Because in the end, there are a lot of men who advocate for each other and support each other. If we can find other men who say, hey, you know what, she's really good too, have you thought about her? Having that internal sponsorship and advocacy is extremely critical for a lot of women who cannot or may not speak up for themselves. So that's the reason why I think having that extra support behind her will actually help a lot. I also want to touch upon something else that you had mentioned, Vivian, which was about the bias. One of the things that I find also is that bias doesn't necessarily come through consciously. There are a lot of unconscious bias that is ingrained in men. And a lot of it is because of the way that we were raised. A lot of it is because of the environment that we grew up in. And that creates bias. And it may not be bias that is intentionally bad or against women. It may be because it's just the environment that we grew up in, where we see the female always in the kitchen. So we assume that that's normal, or that's the usual thing. And then that kind of creeps into the workplace, which is not good. I think that having the support of men who see things differently can help to combat a lot of that unconscious bias. It can help combat even clear conscious bias as well. So I think having men do this for women is a very good thing, and it's not just for not because it's the proper thing to do, but it turns out for many industries, for many countries, it's actually now becoming a necessity, because of the way the demographics are now coming out with less population growth than ever before. Singapore itself is having a negative population growth. So in the end, places like Singapore, as well as many other countries in Asia, we have to have a pipeline of women, not just in STEM, but also for leadership positions in any industry. So to me, if we don't get many of these countries moving towards gender equality, many of these countries are gonna suffer much greater economic calamity than we're seeing today. So this is a very urgent issue, not just in STEM, but in many other parts of society.
Yeah, right. So I think both of those are very relevant points. And as you rightly put it, Vivian, it's not a question of should men help. It's about how how can men help in very concrete ways? And David, you talked about this being needed at different levels of the society. So let me put this forth to you. So how do you think students at a university level, in particular in NTU, be ready to become a part of an initiative like HeForShe and realize that there are certain aspects which are a result of traditional biases that they were born into, and how can they unlearn at this level? From your experience, what are the things, the values that you'd like to share to young NTU community members that you would have wanted to know earlier when you were a student?
You know what, I thought long and hard about that question, and I would say this to all the students, male and female, and that would be join volunteer activities, join volunteer organizations. The HeForShe initiative is a perfect volunteer organization to actually unlearn what you learned. All right. And if you can't join HeForShe, maybe because it doesn't really connect with you, fine, go to another volunteer organization that you can connect with. But the point is, do something. Don't just be a bookworm and study. One of the things that I learned very early on in my career inside Motorola was the value of leadership and management. And I tell you, the volunteer work that I did inside Motorola, this was actually a diversity group. In the US, this was for Asians in particular. So I was actually helping to lead a diversity group to help promote Asians within Motorola to advance their careers. And I will tell you, volunteer management, volunteer leadership is one of the hardest things to do, but you will learn so much more by doing that work. So I would say, hey, join HeForShe. It's a great movement, great idea. If you can't do it in the university, maybe because they have a cap on volunteer organizations, which most don't, then go outside to the outside community and take a leadership position in any volunteer organization. You will learn a lot more about the need for gender equality and why it's important. You're going to learn a lot more about yourself. So for those of you who are female, this is a great way to prepare yourself for the working community after you graduate. You can learn a lot about leadership early on, make the mistakes in the volunteer organization where it will not hurt your career. Because once you get out into the working world, political mistakes can hurt you a little bit. So you might as well learn now while you're in school. I wish I had done that a lot more when I was in a university. But also join Toastmasters. If there's one thing that I highly advocate is learn how to do public speaking. Toastmasters will help you with the public speaking, but the real value of it is developing your self-confidence and your poise. That, I think, is one of the best things that you can do for yourself now. Vivian?
I mean, sorry. So Pallavi, you're just asking how can the students, right, also contribute to that? So David definitely mentioned a lot, and if you know, like what Pallavi was mentioning, actually both of us were volunteering a lot for TEDxNTU, and having that space, you know, of meeting people outside of your comfort zone. I think that is the first step. Right, whether is it, you know, when it comes to gender equity, whether it comes to, you know, being more aware, it always starts with talking to people that may or may not agree on the same point of view. You know, just for like what, you know, Sierin was saying as well. Yeah, Prof Sierin is also saying, it's also, you know, looking at all these different kinds of groups that happen. And it starts with there, having spaces for mutual discussion, understand. Conversations are really the start of everything, to see both sides of the coin. right? Because we also don't want people to like, okay, yay, I'm advocating for this. I'm not sure what it's all about, but I'm advocating for this, right? Because I want to feel like a woke millennial and I want to stand for something, right? So that's also not what we're trying to do. I think where we are at when it comes to moving the needle on gender equity is to make sure that everyone's on the right direction, right? We don't want any yeah, I mean, that's always been very heavily debated. And I talk this to my team all the time, where sometimes you see the gender movements and it's like, wow, it's like one step forward, but two steps back, right? So I always advocate for students as well. Talk to people that disagree, see from their point of view, see why this is happening, not just on, supporting women to pursue their goals, but also looking at the other side of the coin when it comes to, gender equity. We also need to see what men are feeling as well on that. For example, the whole talk about toxic masculinity has always been talked about, right? So it shouldn't be, I always see how the pursuit towards gender equity is not like for the women only. It has to be for both gender and how we're progressing. So I think groups like this for HeForShe basically gives that kind of safe spaces where you can learn together and discuss together, right? Where we're heading, is this the right direction that is suitable for our culture, context? Is this suitable for our community? And from there, what else can we do better? So I think it always starts with, broadening your own perspectives, right? Through volunteer work, through spaces like these. Yeah. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah,
Ollie?
yeah. I think what David said was quite right. And both Vivian and I can attest to the fact that volunteering certainly does help bring out our voices to a much wider audience. So Vivian, I had another question regarding your personal experience during your own campaigns with empowering women. Have you had any such particular support from men? And if yes, how have they impacted you? And if not, what is your aspiration that you'd like to pass on so that they could have done better to support you during those times?
So that was the approach we took from day one, to not make it sound like it's a gendered event. So that was also why we switched our name from Women in Asia to something that, basically nobody knows, right? What gender is all about. And we picked even down to the nitty-gritty of like trying to avoid the very stereotypical gender colors, right? From the superficial level, just to be mindful of how we're communicating with the community. So, the first few events or the last couple of years when we did events, it was never about women leadership or women scientists, because it is about the language, right? And for my team, it's like, why do we have to call it like, this is a women scientist who's good at her work, right? Or this is a female engineer that's top of her field. That's an engineer who's at the top of her field, and she happens to be a female. So, that has always been our direction from day one. So henceforth, when we run events or dialogues or conversations, we never had to like, hey, we need to have more men and invite them in. It became very neutral. For example, it's about like there was a series that we did on entrepreneurs in Asia. So although the subtle note was highlighting and giving the spaces to amplify more of such female involvement in the entrepreneurship circle, but it was never called out to be like the female bosses, like, kind of thing. So as a result, people joined the event and joined the discussions because they truly wanted to see what's next for the entrepreneurship scene in Asia. And for us, the subtle connotation is that, hey, we're bringing more representation, we're showcasing more role models for the community to relate to. So that has always been the approach that we took. So for our events, it's usually about 40%. We hover around 40% of male attendees if we were to break it down to those stats. So it has never been a fully female-only kind of events. So I think, as we are pushing for such movements, such initiatives, it is also, we have to be very careful as well when it comes to communicating with the audience that we're trying to persuade them, right? So even things like this, right? Representation of the panelists, the speakers, the kind of copywritings that we publish, right? Exactly like what I say, stop calling them female scientists, but scientists. Even same things like, firemen, right, and policemen, right? So even subtle switches like that, I think that would contribute a lot, and that has been a few things that we do watch out for. Perhaps this also explains or helps, echoes what David was saying as well, right? A lot of things are unconscious. Like we say that not because we're trying to be nasty or mean or trying to, have a stereotype on that, but it happens so naturally for us. So as community builders ourselves, especially when you're in this, trying to persuade more people, I feel that we do need to be more wary and aware of what these can mean for the community. Yeah, so I hope that explains.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic approach to take. Right. So my next question is to David. So could you maybe talk a bit more about what specific steps Motorola is taking in empowering women? You talked a little bit about the top leadership side, so maybe a little more about the generic steps that Motorola is taking, and also how we go about tackling masculinity affecting workplaces in that sort of context.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that we have done and we continue to do is we do advocate for women by supporting them through our diversity efforts. So we just recently also hired a brand new VP of diversity, equity, and inclusion, just like many other companies. And we've been busy working on internal advocacy. We put together actual key performance numbers of promotion for women. We've even put in a policy now that cuts across globally, where anytime we have any position open, hiring managers must interview at least 2 females for the same position. So that's for both external hires and internal hires. So that's really good news, because now it actually exposes a lot more opportunities for women in STEM in particular, because my company loves to hire STEM graduates. So it really opens the door up quite a bit. Now, the question is how are you as students going to prepare yourself to make yourself the best possible interview candidate? And that's where I say things like, hey, go volunteer. And in fact, Professor Lim had actually listed a whole bunch of organizations here inside NTU. I think that's fantastic. One of the best things that you can do, especially if you want a job in a multinational, not just my company, but I hope you do come to my company, is demonstrate to me that you can do more than just get straight A's. The interesting experience that I had when I was running my diversity group in Motorola. So the way that I ran my diversity group, I ran it just like a small Motorola business division. I actually interviewed for my volunteer leadership positions. I didn't say, come on, volunteers. I actually said, I'm only selecting a few and you have to interview. So one of the more interesting things that I learned was every Asian who sent me their resume, spectacular. Every single one of them, 4.0 out of 4.0, grade point average. All right. But nothing else differentiated them. So that's the reason why I say, if you go and volunteer, and let's say that you're a vice president of membership in one of the organizations, or a vice president of community activities, or the president of one of these organizations. Well, guess what? You now stand out. You have differentiated yourself from everyone else in the interview pool. If you go to Toastmasters and it turns out you hit the silver level, you know what? Now you're a prime candidate for maybe a customer-facing position that I need someone for. So these are ways that you can actually differentiate yourself as a female to help get a leg up over many of the other potential candidates. And if you're competing for a position against maybe other male candidates, your resume may end up standing out greater than a male candidate. And that helps out a lot in improving your chances. So that's just some ideas for you. But those are some of the other things that a lot of multinational companies, certainly a lot of American companies are doing these things because we already know that this is a serious problem, and we're trying to also help in the area of equity. Thanks, Pallavi.
Sure, sure. I think those are quite great first steps to take. And as for the topic of volunteering, I think it goes for everybody. I think that's great advice for men and women alike to just get in there and demonstrate your skills through any other means you can. But especially for women, of course. My final question for today is for both of you. David, you talked about a lot of things being societal biases. So how do you think we can combat gender equality when we have cultural differences to transcend and overcome these cultural biases? Because a lot of times gender equality springs from societal imbuement of certain values, which are also related to one's culture, and sometimes it can be more difficult for certain cultures to overcome them than others based on socio-economic factors and many factors. So how do you think this can be overcome, and what are your thoughts in taking steps at a university level for this especially? My questions to both of you. Maybe Vivian can go first.
Ladies first.
No, we should not do this ladies first, David. So David.
It was David last time, so I'm just alternating.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
So, just trying to be a gentleman. Conscious bias.
I think a lot of things that definitely can be done, especially when it comes to cultural norms and all that. And I spoke about it previously as well. One thing it is, I think first and foremost, we have to stop taking the benchmarks from the West, right, or other cultures to decide where we are at when it comes to gender equality. So if we are comparing ourselves with the Western cultures or even, the neighboring cultures, I think it needs to be contextualized for us to first understand that. If we're always comparing ourselves, for example, to the Scandinavian countries and how they're seeing gender neutrality, then we are always struggling, right, with that, and it's such a huge struggle for us. However, I think it's to first understand, hey, here's what we are okay with. Here's what a vision for a career woman look like, right? And it's okay, and start from there. And of course, the more we socialize all these gender norms, socialize such conversations, the easier it is, right? Because just like what you said, and David also mentioned, these are things that we grew up with. So really, the fear is that whatever that we grew up with, can we stop bringing it, forward for the future generations? Can we stop them right now and not, have our younger children carry it on, right, and grow up in that kind of environment? So how can we do that? Of course, start having discussions, socializing all such norms, having more representation. This is my own personal experience as well. And, when I reflected about it, it probably contributed to why I dropped out from the whole STEM pipeline, was that back then when I was in university, there was this lack of role model and representation within, my faculty. So sad to say, Prof. Phee wasn't leading MAE back then. So there was this lack, right? I do not even remember a single female professor back in my time. Pallavi, I'm not sure, could you remember any female profs back then in MAE? Yeah.
In computer science, I think they were very limited, but very limited.
So it was the same. So it was difficult, right, for me to relate. It was difficult for me to, as a student, right, to see, hey, that's what, a scientist would look like, right? I cannot relate. I cannot relate at all. And I think that, I only started relating to that when I was part of the TEDxNTU community, where I saw, so many women who are pursuing science in those fields, right? And slowly from there, and I tell this to Prof. Lim and all the faculties all the time whenever, I have a chance, is it that I feel that my career trajectory would have been so different if I'm in campus right now, seeing all these different progressions, seeing the number of female faculties. It's not so much of like, hey, she's a great female engineer or scientist, but it's that, relation, and I feel that comfort, that sense of comfort that, like, hey, this is how it will be like. And for me to even think, right, what will happen if I become a working mom, or this is what happens, do they rejoin the workforce? Like it's putting the problem more relatable. So I feel that this would be very helpful for the younger generations as well. So as they start to see more and more such imageries, role models, can help them too. Yeah, so that's my point of view. David, what about yourself?
Sure.
Okay, interesting point of view. Very good. Okay, so let me also state, I've been in the workforce over 38 years, and I will tell you right now that I see wondrous change and very good hope for the next generation. What I see here in Singapore, and it may be the result because it's a first world country. What I see is today's generation being a lot more assertive and mindful for their own wants and needs, unlike older generations. The older generations, at least here in Singapore, there was a little bit of social engineering going on where people were told, go into this career because we need you here, you know, that kind of a thing. But nowadays, what I find is that the younger generation, if they say, I want to be an artist, all of a sudden, many of the parents will actually support that, which is wonderful. So I would say for many of you who are students listening in, if you love the STEM study area because you like science, you like the technology, you know, engineering and mathematics, stay in it. Pick it as your choice of career because it really is a wonderful field. It's a lot of fun to be in. I would say that you should also, if you encounter bias in the home, for example, maybe your aunt and uncle or grandparents, they don't want you to study in the STEM field. I would say, you know what, I would be a little bit more confrontational, and I would say, you know what, I love this field, I'm going to stay in it, regardless of what you say. But that's me. That's me. I would rather be confrontational about things like that. But in the end, what happens is if you pick a job or a career or an area of study that you really, really love, you're going to be a lot happier later in life. And ultimately, I will tell you, interesting thing, ultimately, that's what all parents ultimately want. They want their children to be happy. The problem is that many of the parents today, they'll also say, you know, you're in your 20s, you really don't know what you want, you're still young. What they're really saying is, and this is unconscious bias, what they're really saying is, I really want you to make a lot of money and have a very good career so that way you can be self-sufficient. That's really what they're saying. But but in the end, as we get older as parents, we really want our children to be happy. And ultimately, if you really love the STEM field, the STEM areas of study, stay in it. It really is a wonderful area to be in. And by the way, I do somewhat take issue with the STEM statistics. You could start off in STEM career, a STEM study area, a STEM major, go into a STEM career. But that STEM career could ultimately lead you into much bigger and better things that you didn't know that it could have taken you. For example, you could actually start off maybe in an engineering field, and then all of a sudden it spins off into something else where maybe you become an entrepreneur in a totally different area. And you know what? That's okay too. There's nothing wrong with it. STEM, I think that the STEM discipline and the thinking processes that STEM teaches you really can take your life in places where you would never have dreamed of. So I think that it's very promising, and I encourage all of you to stay with it. Pallavi?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I think the point there would be that STEM or no STEM, women shouldn't have any particular barriers in pursuing what they want. irrespective of their choices. So especially I can relate with that, because especially where I come from, there are cultural biases that actually focus on women, pushing women to make certain career choices and not make other career choices as well. So I just think that women should not have barriers to pursuing what they want anymore, in terms of career and otherwise. So I think we are running a bit over time, but before we wrap up, I'd like to invite all of you here to join us in solidarity. International Women's Day is coming up, and we have a sign that actually denotes the breaking of biases and barriers, exactly what we talked about all during this panel with Vivian and David. So will you join in and actively promise to call out gender bias and discrimination and stereotyping each time you see it? If you do, let's just cross our arms like this to show solidarity. I request all the panel members at least to switch on your videos. We can just sort of cross our arms, probably take a screenshot, somebody. Vijay, can you help take a screenshot perhaps? All right. Okay, that's a lot of people. Wow. Hello. All right. Are we good? Can we take a photo? All right. All good. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for your participation. And if everybody has any questions, Vivian has shared her LinkedIn profile as well. And Prof. Sierin has also encouraged the participation of all of you guys across 4 student groups mentioned in the chat. Please refer to the chat for more details. And you may contact Prof. Sierin for more details on it as well. So thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in today. Thank you, David, for your very inspiring talk, and Vivian as well for sharing your experiences. And thank you, Vijay, for kickstarting this process today as well. We had some pretty important conversations today, and I hope it brought some value to your life today. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pallavi.
Thank you everyone for joining.